Real quick, once you've listened, we'd love to have your feedback. Find Trey at treygraham.substack.com or email us at treygraham@substack.com. Let us know what you liked and what you didn't, what you want more of and what you need less of, or whatever else comes to mind. Ideas for stories and guests are always welcome. That's Trey Graham, Trey with an E, and Graham like the cracker, .substack.com. Now, enjoy the show.
I don't know the rules of the road.
This is like going to church. There'll be clear cues when you're supposed to stand and
Right.
sit and kneel.
Maybe less kneeling than church. Alrighty, in 3, 2. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I am in fact your host for this little episode, and I am excited y'all are here today for this live taping of our first ever episode. My name is Trey Graham, and I've been covering arts and culture here in DC for more than 30 years now. The great thing about doing something that long is realizing how fast things change and how little you can ever actually know. So this show is meant not to be about me telling you what's happening in the nation's capital. It's about us going looking for what's happening together. And we're going to have some help from friends and colleagues I've met across 3 decades in one of the most multicultural cities on the planet, and from the occasional fascinating stranger who captures our attention. The idea is that, when I grab my critic's notebook and head to the theater or movie screening, I generally have an extra ticket. So I can take along a +1, a person to keep me company and be a sounding board at intermission and after the show. And, we always talk about what we've just seen, but this is DC, and my +1s come from all kinds of workplaces and backgrounds. So we talk about all kinds of other things: pop culture, politics, city planning, science policy, gastronomy, global demographics, which antidepressants we're on, all sorts of things. So I will be bringing along a +1 for each episode of this project, too. It's a new co-host and co-conspirator for each outing, a new sparring partner for each inquiry into how Washington culture gets shaped and shifted by the headline guests that we will interview together. And this afternoon, I am genuinely delighted to introduce you the very first of these +1s. If you don't already know him, he is a fine fellow, a thoughtful critic, and the only arts journalist I know who is as much at home in a boxing ring as in a black box theater, Mr. Chris Klimek.
I also know plenty about city planning and gastronomy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm glad you included that. Hello, Trey.
I would expect nothing less. How are you? What are you up to these days?
A lot of writing and less writing than I would like.
Okay.
To answer your question with unnecessary specificity, I'm currently late on a review of the AI judge movie Mercy. That dares to ask the question: what if Minority Report, The Fugitive, and every Star Trek episode where Captain Kirk smooth talks a computer into detonating itself were bad?
Were bad. Oh, okay. I was waiting for that. I was waiting for the punchline on that. It was. You are, among other things, a writer about the theater for the Washington Post, as am I, on a freelance basis. We both do that. Who else? Where else can we find your stuff?
Well, we know one another first from the Washington City paper.
That's true.
Right? Still soldiering on.
It's still there, even though it's not a paper.
In the face of everything. Sarah Marloff, the wonderful current arts editor, she did return my text, so we're alive. For another
still
day.
there. Okay, good.
Yeah.
And for a while, you held down an editorship at Smithsonian's Air and Space magazine.
Yeah, for
publishing
10 years. Yeah,
publishing what I have to assume was aviation porn.
A lot of that. That was what to the extent the lights were staying on until they no longer were. Like the most loyal constituency were the military aviation enthusiasts, and that paid for the space exploration coverage, the physics, the astronomy, and the occasional sort of sci-fi pop culture-y inflected stuff that I was able to smuggle into the magazine.
I was going to say there's got to be a war story or two there about something you managed to pull off without your superiors noticing.
I can't really think of anything that I managed to get away with, but I know, so this is already 10 years ago because, time is a terrifying flat circle. But on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, which would have, been 2016, a great year in terms of realizing the sort of utopian future of Star Trek. I think we can all agree made great strides.
Yeah, so, doing well by that measure.
Yeah, but and actually so weirdly my association with Air and Space magazine started prior to that when I had done a radio story about the the Enterprise model that's in the Air and Space Museum as an exhibit. That was when I started reporting this story, it was down in the basement gift shop, as though it was this shameful artifact that they wanted to bury. And it has since been restored and moved to a much more prominent place in the lobby of the museum, where you pass it as you're going through the metal detectors. But anyway, so the editor of the magazine, Linda Shiner, she hit upon this idea, like, what if we celebrated the anniversary by talking to various astronauts and researchers and astronomers, and who credit seeing Star Trek at an impressionable age for influencing their career path. So I did that, and it was great. It was super fun. The piece went great. I talked to Simon Pegg, who had written what was the current Star Trek film at that time, and played Scotty, in that iteration of Star Trek, and Jim Garvin, who I think is retired now, but he was the chief scientist, his actual title, chief scientist at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, just up the road. And I thought, the perfect thing for us to call this story about just this group of notable people who had been influenced by Star Trek would be Warp Core, CORPS. And I thought, this is a title that makes sense, even if, the context that it has in Star Trek mythology misses you. It's still fine. It doesn't exclude anyone. And Linda, whom I love, God bless her, said, nope, we're going to call it the Trek Effect, which means nothing.
Nothing
means
at all.
Nothing. No.
Oh, well.
And Warp Core was just sitting there,
Our
and
darlings
as you can
all
hear,
get killed.
No, and I want you to know that I have not been sucking on sour grapes about this for a decade.
For a decade,
Absolutely
no.
not.
It doesn't hold a bitter spot in your memories. Who do you read for fun these days?
Are we talking about fiction writers or
Or journalism, or
okay.
pop culture fun, or
I
whatever.
feel like I could answer this more readily if you asked me, like, who do you envy? Who would you like to try to, assume their identity through?
I think that's a fine question.
Yeah,
Why don't you just answer it your own self?
Okay, good. Pop music critic Stephen Hayden, I think, like many people in this profession, has migrated primarily to Substack now.
Yep.
But I love him. I have both a long relationship as a reader and also sort of as a mentor / instructor with Michael Phillips, the long tenured Chicago Tribune theater and film critic, who just they just zeroed out his position a few months ago. So now the third largest city, I think, in America does not have a full-time film critic in it. Yeah, it's a real shame. Sincerely, you and Mondello were both kind of seminal figures. No. When that was certainly. Actually, no, I knew you guys long enough by your bylines. It was really Glenn Weldon, where I like his appearance in the city paper around like 06, was I was experiencing enough professional frustration by that time, clearly abated, now, to just say, who the hell is this guy? Who does this clown think he is, writing jokes in the newspaper?
Now he's writing books.
Oh yeah, well, give him an inch and he'll take more column inches. That's an obsolete joke. It still works for the Post, not for the city paper anymore.
Column inches, for those of you who are younger.
Yeah.
Used to be an artifact of the print paper.
So I mean, when I started writing for the Post in 06, like, pieces would be assigned at inches.
Yeah,
and I mean, I had worked at newspapers, but I had never just been given an assignment in inches before, and I would have to try to figure out some kind of conversion into a word.
I come from an era where papers were literally pasted up. Little pieces of paper were cut out of larger pieces of paper and then pasted onto giant pages, then photographed and sent over a satellite to a printing plant. That's how that used to work.
Yeah.
And so you would get 8 column inches at a particular width, and 8 inches, each column inch translated to roughly 42 words. So if you were but you just learned to think in inches. I would tell my critic at USA Today back in the day, I would tell him, I need an 8-inch review of this. Sorry, space just changed. We had an ad drop. We need to cut your review to 6 inches. And he would go take 2 inches out of it without thinking about the word count. It's just how it worked.
Right. It's never like we lost the ad space on the page, so we need you to write more.
Right.
Which like the first things that I had in the Post were these pop music reviews that were always assigned at 250 words, which is throat clearing.
Yeah.
And I would push it into, and occasionally I would get my hand slapped, but not very often. And I actually, that was a place where it was like started to try to get away with formal jokes, like just ending on an ellipse or, I would try to exceed the permittable word length by an exact amount. I don't know. It was all very amusing to me when I got away with it.
Actually, I believe the first thing I ever published in the Post was a book review of T.C. Boyle's collected stories, and they gave me 800 words, and I turned it in at 650. And when they asked me to pad it out, I said, I really don't have anything else to say.
Wow.
I learned.
Not a position.
It was the only time I've ever underfiled.
Okay.
I've learned since then. Anyway, but Chris, you are here because you and I both have spent a lot of time at the Woolly Mammoth Theater Company and other theaters in this Washington, D.C. metro area. And we are going to jointly harass and harangue and otherwise interview the excellent Howard Schulwitz, who is the co-founder and longtime artistic director, currently artistic director emeritus, is that right, of Woolly Mammoth Theater Company?
That is my title. It sounds fairly boring.
Hi, Howard.
Yeah,
Welcome.
Do you lose the emeritus when they get a third artistic
I
director?
don't
or do
know.
you
In
only
fact,
get
I've been
keep
meaning
that
to
thing?
ask about this now that Reggie White is coming in.
So you've retired as artistic director in 17, 18,
Yeah,
thereabouts.
summer of 2018.
It was more recent than 1718. It was in the United States of America.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've been back into the world of theater to act occasionally, right?
No.
Have you not?
The funny thing is, after I stepped down from Woolly, I got offered more acting gigs than directing gigs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people don't come after you, no matter what kind of reputation you have as a director, or even as an actor, when you're older. Theater is a young person's game. And you've got to put some energy into sort of chasing opportunities. But I was offered a couple of acting gigs, and I thought, oh my God, a whole month in rehearsal, and then a whole month on stage, and a month before that learning my lines. And just thinking about it from the perspective of my current age and semi-retirement status was like, oh my God, actors just work so hard. I'm not sure I want to do it. But when I got this offer to direct, it was a no-brainer. Because I guess you haven't introduced that yet.
We haven't. No,
I'm
we're
currently
going to fix that in edit. Howard.
Yeah. Okay.
Would this be a good moment for me to interject something about Howard's acting career?
Yes,
because this was the
should do
occasion.
that.
I was looking back because I remember that it might have been that you and I first sat down to talk about Mike Daisy at Woolly when that whole scandal happened. Because I covered that for the
Mike Daisy, the monologuist.
Yes, the agony and ecstasy of Steve Jobs was the show where he was found to have invented a few details. You know, once it went from being a stage monologue to This American Life, which we know, and I think he knew, has different editorial standards for literal, strict, verifiable, factual truth versus what's permissible on stage.
You can get away with any old thing in the theater.
Yeah, and I mean, I he mounted a nuanced defense that I was more persuasive to me than I think to a lot
almost
of people
everyone
at
else
at the time. Anyway, but so Howard and I had spoken then, but I know when Woolly did the Fire Raisers. Do I have the title of this right?
It was retranslated as The Arsonists.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So I mean, this was, but Howard was returning to acting after a long absence.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a city paper story about this, all of which is simply by way of introducing a bit that hit the cutting room floor.
In that feature.
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't good enough for the city paper.
So you're bringing up your
9
old
years
stuff
ago,
to the
but
show.
It's that's right. I have definitely
You've been
brought
waiting for a chance to
my
get
B
this
and C
back.
material. No, I mean, if we've established nothing else,
appreciate
it's
that.
that I hold a grudge for a very long time.
Okay.
No, well, so I hope Howard will forgive me for this, but there was a bit that Jen Mendenhall. I'm just waiting for you to react when I say it. Yes, Jen Mendenhall had given me about a production of Lenny and Lou.
I knew where you were
that
going.
we were into together, 2004. Where in praising you as an actor and as a scene partner, she talked about a salacious scene that you had together in Lenny and Lou in 2004 at Woolly Mammoth. And in my phrase, trying to work that into the story, I said that kiss felt like mere foreplay or 5 or 6 play, if Chief Washington Post theater critic Peter Marks is to be believed. And I pulled out Peter's review, again, 2004, where he said, "It's not pornographic exactly, The one scene of acrobatic rutting is so well choreographed that it would make a decent novelty act in an X-rated Cirque du Soleil.
So here's the funny thing. If we had to choreograph that scene today, there'd be a bevy of intimacy coordinators. But the director, to the late Tom Pruitt, who we loved working with at Woolley, and Jen Mendenhall and I, we'd all worked together so many times. We staged that scene in half an hour. And then we spent a lot of time cleaning it up and figuring it out. But it was this wild comedy about these two middle-aged brothers and their mother, who played by Nancy Robinette, who had Alzheimer's. And I was the bad brother. And Michael Rosado was the good brother. And I don't know, I think I was having sex with my wife. Jennifer was my wife in it, I think.
Oh, well.
So I can't remember the details. So
scandalous.
At least it wasn't that scandalous.
I mean, marital coupling in a Woolley show.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Well, that's the scandal.
Yeah.
But it was like running all around the stage, knocking over a chair, screwing here, screwing there. It's like all sorts of stuff.
I was going to ask, was this the one where she got screwed over the kitchen table or over the back of a sofa?
All
or
of the
none
above.
Of the above?
All
Okay.
of the above.
Right.
Yeah, we literally staged it in half an hour. People thought we were having sex on stage because we contrived these little little tails on our shirts. I had my underwear on the whole time. People swore that I was naked and that Jennifer was naked. It was just very, very cleverly put together, but so easy. Partly because of the way we knew each other and the long, long relationship we had through the Woolley Company. And I think that's one of the kind of benefits of a company. You have this kind of ease of working together. And you can do fun and outrageous stuff together on stage and not even think titwice about it.
And not even think twice. You are
So our next guest
back.
is intimacy coordinator.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm working with one now, a really, really good one, Lorraine Sloan Ressiger, who's, we haven't gotten to that yet.
No, it's okay.
The show I'm
No, this
directing
is going
now.
to set up the show you're directing now.
And the other connection being Michael Rosado, who has one of the leading roles in the show I'm about to mention.
And this is back at Woolley. You're directing for the first time since you retired as AD. So let's just jump right into that. Tell me about this playwright, Ali Viterbi, and how you found her play and what the play is and why we should come see it.
Well, I'll try to keep the story short because it's a long one. Right after I stepped down from Woolley, I was asked to direct a workshop at the Kennedy Center. Sorry.
What was then the Kennedy
I feel
Center?
That requires a moment of mourning.
Yes.
But at the Kennedy Center, the National New Play Network MFA Playwrights Program, which was a fantastic program. They're still running. I directed a wonderful workshop of an earlier play of hers called In Every Generation. It had a couple good premiere productions, but it got smacked by the pandemic. So it was just part of that generation of plays that kind of ran into cancellations. It was going to be done at Olney, but never got done in this area.
And this play was actually called Every Generation.
In Every Generation.
In Every Generation.
Yeah, and every scene was a Passover Seder. So Allie's from an Italian Jewish family and writes a lot about her Jewish heritage and Jewish roots. Not exclusively. I think she writes in a very kind of universal context. But anyway, we wanted to work together. Then she wrote a new play. They asked me to be sort of an ambassador for the play. And so I was helping her pitch it to different theaters. And among the people I pitched it to was Maria Goyanis at Woolley and Haley at Theater J. And lo and behold, totally unexpectedly, they came back and said, "You want to do it for both of us?" So it's a co-pro between Woolley and Theater J. And Theater J's been my sort of teaching home where I've been doing classes for the last few years.
I was going to say, you're no stranger to Theater J.
No.
You've acted there and directed there.
Well, and
as
also
right?
Woolley and Theater J had this whole period before we built our current theater in 2005 where we did several co-pros together, and we also rented their space. There were about 13 Woolley productions at Theater J back in the 2000-2005 era.
Yeah, you were homeless for a little while because I remember seeing you at the Kennedy Center in what used to be the old AFI theaters, now the Family Theater.
I mean, I always say Woolley wouldn't exist if two organizations hadn't come to our rescue, and it was Theater J, Ari Roth at the time, and the Kennedy Center under Michael Kaiser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to return to the play at hand, this new play is called The World to Come, and it is about...
Well, it's set in the Seabreeze Hebrew Home for the Aging in San Diego, more or less in the present, but it kind of posits an alternative history of the past 15 years. So I've been describing it as a spiritual play built on the foundation of a science fiction play. And as you know, I have a minor specialty in apocalyptic drama.
When people ask me what a Woolley play is like, I usually say, well, were you offended? Was there some fairly graphic sex, and did the world end?
Right. So the world, I don't want to give too much away,
Okay.
but it's kind of a love story among four senior citizens in this retirement community. And then they're learning bit by bit about what's happening outside the window and how the world is changing as a result of environmental collapse, political collapse. But fundamentally, it's a play about the agency and resiliency of older people. And I think that its thesis is that, you know, that period in our life can be the most transformational in our lives. Allie lives within blocks of her 4 grandparents, and she's been extremely close to all of her. You might have talked to her about it. Extremely close to all of her grandparents, and her feeling when she was starting to write the play was that her grandparents, some of whom came through the Holocaust, had better tools for dealing with the pandemic when it happened here in the U.S. than all of her younger friends, and she was kind of surprised by that. And I think that was the spark for this particular play.
Well, and how does that resonate as you stage the play now?
Well, it's like the play, she started writing it, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. You know how American plays take forever before they get shopped around and workshopped and really reach the stage. And now the world has caught up with it, because the stuff that's happening in it now, this kind of environmental combined with political collapse, I mean, that just seems like we're in it practically. So I love when a play is sort of ahead of its time.
Right.
So yeah, it's...
But to give folks a little bit more sense of how strange the world of this play is, it's set in a retirement home for aging people, but the nurses in this facility are wearing body armor?
Ro Body, who's just a brilliant DC actor, plays a series of nurses, and each nurse comes in with the first nurse is a sort of conventional, you know, nurse's outfit, a super nice guy, Nurse Mike. But then each nurse comes in after that with more elaborate protective gear that makes the residents start to feel, oh boy, the background of the play is that older people, when they reach 75, have to go into a facility like this of one kind or another, or they get thrown.
That's the Logan's Run element.
Yes, totally. It's totally Logan's Run, or else they get to the facility under the freeway where they just die off.
Oh no!
But so this series of increasingly gruesome nurses kind of tells you a little bit about what's going on outside there, how the rules are changing, and this increasing sense of paranoia that everything they do is being watched. That nobody cares about them anymore, and you start to feel that all this protective gear is not to protect the people on the inside from the outside, but the outside from the inside in a society that doesn't value older people.
It does, in fact, sound like a Woolley play.
It does.
I mean, I think of Mr. Burns as even though that was 30 plus years into Woolly's, because that was what, 2012, I think, is it Anne Washburn?
At least 30 years.
Yeah. No, which you directed, right? And that
no, Steve Costin directed.
Oh, sorry.
From the Civilians in New York.
And now it's being made into a movie.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Being
that.
adapted into a movie.
Oh, wow. That's hard for me to imagine.
But speaking of post-apocalyptic
Who's
settings,
doing
and you're going to have to let me slide that in the edit, because I don't know.
Okay. Ron Howard.
It's somebody interesting. It's someone interesting. No, I'm sorry, I don't know.
No.
I don't recall. Back to The World to Come. This production has a bunch of people in it that you've worked with before, to say the least. Worked with before.
I mean, I mentioned Michael Rosado, but also
Naomi Jacobson.
You know, those are longtime Woolley Company members going way, way back.
Bridget Cleary.
Bridget Cleary, who's so wonderful, and we worked with her once at Woolley in a co-pro with Theater J of Tony Kushner's Homebody Cobble,
which was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen.
It was
on
amazing,
stage.
directed by John Vrakey, and she played the homebody, and she's just delightful to work with. And a newcomer to this area, Claudia Rosenshield, who kind of had a career and then went off and raised a family and now is coming back to the stage, who plays a sort of Mexican-Jewish woman, and Ro Body, who I mentioned. So it's the five. So
did you generally seek out the experienced people for the comfort level? You talked about what it's like working with a company of people you know.
Well, it's also practical because the characters are older. So, you know, as you cast older roles, there's fewer people around and available. But yes, the goal was to kind of do a little bit of a Woolley Company reunion. And I think that applies to plus they're also the most amazing actors. But it also applies to the designers, Misha Kochman doing the set, who is a longtime company member, Colin K. Bills doing the lighting, and Devanya Stack doing the costumes. So it does feel like, even though when I first got into the project, I had to kind of adjust to the culture of Woolley. After 7 years, it was no longer my theater. It was really Maria's, the culture that Maria had created.
This is Maria Manuela Goyanes,
Yeah,
who took
exactly.
over after you left.
A little bit of adjustment to that, but on the whole, it really feels like coming home, partly because I'm surrounded by people I know and love.
A mischievous question. Did you reach out for this production to Ray Seahorn? Because speaking of former Woolley Company members who are having a life right now, Ray Seahorn was in several Woolley productions back when you were across the street on Church Street.
Yeah, she wouldn't be quite old enough for this show.
No,
the
not
characters
quite.
are in their 70s,
Nor would she appreciate our mentioning it.
Well, no. I mean, because I think Ray talks about her time in D.C.
Oh, she does, for sure.
And at George Mason as a student as being quite formative to her work. Her work at Woolley included Stop Kiss, which is a production everybody still talks about that she did with Holly Twyford, and a weird play at the Kennedy Center called Andromeda Shack. I don't know if you remember that one.
Only vaguely, but
And then Freedom Land, which I directed her in, Amy Freed's play. So
Yeah.
she had a wonderful short career at Woolley.
and has gone on to a much longer and distinguished career with Vince Gilligan in Better Call Saul and now in Pluribus, which she just won the Golden Globe for.
Yeah, and interestingly, shifting from her early work in Hollywood seemed to be more on the comic vein because she was so funny as a young actress. And I know she's capable of being very funny now, but has shifted into this, what I understand to be this much more psychological. I haven't seen the new series, but it sounds intense.
Super
and quite
intense.
brilliant.
And sci-fi and
She's
post-apocalyptic.
just got
and,
bottomless tools, Ray.
Yeah, for sure.
She did from the time she was right out of college.
yeah. I want to talk about one of the other things that is a passion for you, which is theater that's not in D.C., theater that's happening elsewhere, and how it informs the things we occasionally do here. You are associated with an organization called CITD, the Center for International Theater Development, which is a kind of cultural exchange, yes?
Right, right.
Tell me more.
Well, when the last maybe 12 years of my tenure at Woolley, I was doing a lot of trips to Eastern and Central Europe, Poland, Hungary, Russia, Bulgaria, and a lot of them were sponsored by a guy named Philip Arnaud, who was the founder of the Theater Project in Baltimore, if you've ever been there. But then most of his later career was as this guru connecting American theater artists with their counterparts in other countries. So a really good example is Philip was the person who invited Jim Nicola from the New York Theater Workshop to the Netherlands to meet Ivo van Hove and see his work, and that led to Ivo's whole career in New York.
So I was going to ask the grantor question, why? But you've actually just answered it. It creates connections where there just weren't any.
Well, connections that lead to collaborations, which is an exciting thing. In this environment now, it's harder and harder to think of that because the European governments are not putting as much money into that, and the American government, forget it. They're not supporting international collaboration. But our focus now is really building those relationships, the foundational relationships between our country and others, so that over the long term, people will find a way to work together. But also just seeing the work, like bringing a group of Americans, like we brought people like Reggie from Mosaic, who I know you're going to interview.
Reggie Douglas.
Reggie Douglas, Maria Goyanes, Adam Imivar, when he was at Theater J, we invited to Poland. And so they're like mind-blowing experiences that then give them new ideas about the work they want to do on their own stages.
So this is one of the things I wanted to ask you, is like, what kinds of things are you seeing and how is it changing the way you think about making theater and hearing theater and, I don't know, developing theater?
Well, Poland, where I've been focused most. I mean, we also work in Hungary. We're working in Ukraine a lot right now.
And South Africa?
We're not currently, but Philip in the past worked a lot in East Africa.
Okay.
But Poland, for example, it still has this aggressive experimental tradition where almost every piece you see, or an awful lot of them, are incredibly political about what's going on right now. They are reinventing the theater form almost with every show. And you feel as though an American, how could you even keep up with a scene like that, where the kids coming out of graduate programs are like going, okay, I have a whole new idea of what theater can be compared to, my teachers who were doing this 20 years ago. There's this feeling of trying to one-up one another with innovation. And I think for Americans, that what the Americans who we brought there, you always use the word freedom. They say there's a level of freedom that the artists have to explore in these other countries, especially Eastern and Central Europe, that we feel we don't have in the United States, which is ironic, considering that some of them are battling with the same right-wing governments and those sort of same struggles we are. But their tradition is that the director, and often the director and actors together, often the playwright has a secondary role, that they're creating something that's never been seen before.
And they're doing these, I imagine, in smaller spaces, not giant institutional theaters.
No, it's up and down.
Is it?
mean, you can see shows that by our standards would be considered very experimental in very big theaters and in small ones. And that's not to say there isn't any work that looks like, Polish classics reinvented in the way you might see at the Shakespeare Theater in D.C. There certainly is a lot of that work. But the work that we tend to focus on is sort of reinventing the form of theater from the ground up.
And is there anybody in D.C. doing that kind of work now?
Well, I think maybe Robert was trying to sustain that tradition at Cena
Robert
by
McNamara
doing some
at
of those
Cena
kinds
Theater.
of scripts and doing a lot of that European-inspired plays. I think I have to say, I think one of the strengths of Maria's tenure at Woolly Mammoth was she wanted to be form-busting as often as possible, and sometimes that was head-scratching.
And I think people didn't understand that as an explicit goal.
A goal, yeah.
Right.
But I think she was relentless in it, and she really, I think, saw herself building on that platform of risk-taking that I had developed at Woolly. And but I think maybe those are, it's hard, right
I think
now.
a little bit of Elizabeth Dinkova at Spooky Action.
I think
maybe?
so. I'm a real fan of what she's doing, and I think she is taking some risks. But I do think that the American theater is in a, I don't want to say audience pleasing, but in a slightly conservative mode because of financial pressures post-pandemic, bringing audiences back. We're seeing a lot of musicals. Nothing wrong with them. I love musicals.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of sort of hits coming out of New York and London. Again, nothing wrong with any of that, but I think this has not been the most fruitful time for experimental theater. It's important to mention Rorschach, though, as well.
Rorschach,
because I
of
think
course, yes.
Rorschach is always trying to rethink.
Strange spaces, strange shows, strange concepts.
Yep.
We have just a couple of minutes left, and one of the things we want to do on every episode is make a couple of recommendations for things that ought to be cool or ought to be fun or just something you've heard about that you're excited about. I need to catch up with Octet up the street at Studio Theater, which opened this past weekend and which I hear is terrific. And in fact, we may talk about that a little bit in our next episode with my next plus one. I am also not mad about the reading of Lear that's coming up this Saturday at the Folger. It's an adaptation by Marcus Gardley that's billed as a remix and set in the Fillmore District in the 60s. Hannah Sharif from Arena Stage is the director, and the Lear is John Douglas Thompson. I am not even kidding. Justin Weeks is in it, Shireen Babb, Craig Wallace, Nicole Salter, Harriet DeFoy. It's going to be nuts, and it's one night only, part of the 4th Annual Reading Room Festival at the Folger. One of those things that just happens all over D.C. every now and then because it's D.C. That's what I got. Chris,
God,
what you got?
Was it the Merchant of Venice that John Douglas Thompson did?
Yes,
a couple
at the
years
Shakespeare
ago?
Theater,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I did not see it, I'm afraid. So this will be my first time
I
seeing one of the world's greatest Shakespeareans. I'm going to see him do a reading in an intimate room at the Folger.
Wow.
Boy, gosh, do I have this is so lame. I'm going to a like the touring National Theater version of Stereophonic next month.
No,
which
that's
I
just
just never
great
saw.
show.
I never saw it on. No, but I don't want to plug a touring production of a Broadway.
No, the
show.
National is changing. It's a different beast than it used to be. They've got new management, they've got a new lease agreement, and they have a whole new approach to programming philosophy. So watch the National to see what happens there over the next 5 to 10 years.
I agree with that, and we shouldn't forget David Atchmey's, one of his earliest plays was Stunning, which we premiered at Woolly Mammoth, and it was super experimental. I mean, a really weird, strange play. I don't know whether you remember it, about a Syrian Jewish girl, I don't know, and just sort of dealing with her African-American maid, nanny in her household in a relationship that upends this entire community. So David was capable of very provocative work, and I'm interested. I haven't seen Stereophonic, so I'm interested to see how from that he gets to stereotype.
Something
I
that
mean,
big.
I keep reading about how Rumors, like it remains one of the best-selling. Apparently, it was a top-selling album of 2025, and like 2 generations subsequent from its
Yeah,
release.
yeah.
You know, the Gen Z is getting back into Fleetwood Mac or discovering
right.
Fleetwood Mac. So there's a
Howard,
long
anything in
cultural
particular on
You
your
know,
radar?
I have to say, I have to be selfish here and say how much I'm excited about the tenure of Reggie D. White, who's coming to Woolly Mammoth as our new artistic director. I'm not. I think he's going to have his handprint a little bit on the next season that gets announced. I'm not sure how that's being. I'm not in the middle of things at Woolly anymore.
Well, I heard from Allie that he's been giving her notes on this play. So
Oh yeah, he came to our designer run through, had very, very helpful notes for me. So I'm excited about that. I was a big fan of Fremont Avenue at Arena Stage, which I thought was probably more subversive for an arena audience than maybe it was given credit for.
yeah, this cute little domestic comedy that ends up with a couple of gay boys in their underwear on the sofa.
Yeah, sort of reconciling with their grandfather.
Right.
So I really loved it, and I've gotten to know Reggie a little bit through this, selection process. I was very on the periphery, but we spoke a few times, and I'm a huge fan, so I'm super excited about that.
Awesome. Any particular shows or movies or anything else coming up that's got you excited?
See, here's the problem with living, us being semi-retired, living in Alexandria, Virginia. It's like now I understand why people say, "Oh, I just can't come into the district." It's horrible when I was an artistic director and I would hear that, and now I got, "Oh yeah, I could stay at home and watch TV."
No, Howard was saying before we started that he's super excited that the X-Men and the Avengers will finally be in
Will
a,
you
in a
finally be
movie.
coming together in a movie?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
true.
that's really what
I think
lights his fire.
that's perfectly fair.
I'm excited that you're directing again. I'm, Stupid Fucking Bird and oh my gosh, the Bruce Norris play, Clybourne Park.
Oh, Clybourne Park.
Yeah,
Oh my
like
God.
those were such seminal experiences for me.
And I want to remind people about Robert O'Hara's Zombie the American.
Yes.
It was a show that
It's
just didn't
crazy
quite
thing.
get to the finish line.
No, it didn't.
It was so interesting.
I wrote one of the few favorable
Oh, you
reviews
did?
of that
Good for
I
you.
read. Yeah, and then people
You're
told
wrong.
me how
That
dumb
show
I
was a hot
yeah,
mess.
Yeah, no,
It was a hot mess.
I was outside of consensus on that one.
But I used to always say I love big messy plays more than I love, that try to do something ambitious rather than small tidy plays that, don't really challenge you.
And I think that sums up your career rather nicely.
There it is.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Chris. That is it for this episode of whatever we are calling this show. I'm Trey Graham. My co-founder and executive producer, without whom none of this would have happened, is Solomon Haile Selassie. Our production assistant for today's live taping is Megan Hanna. Many thanks to them both. And today's plus one, Mr. Chris Klimek. You can follow him on most of the socials at CT Klimek. Special thanks to our venue sponsors here at the Barrel House Cafe and Bar in Logan Circle. Christopher Lynch and Biva Ranjit are the co-owners. We had help from Ashley Ray and Kushbu at the bar and the rest of the terrific staff here. Stephen and Jean, you know who you are and how important you've been, and I have a very special and extremely personal round of appreciation that I need to send to founding sponsors Martha Mountain, Kim Bryant, and Sandra Russell. This experiment would never have gotten off the ground without their sustained encouragement and financial support. So thank you to them and to all of you for being here. Next time.
Hold up, before you go, one more thing. We'd love to have your feedback. Find Trey at treygraham.substack.com or email us at treygraham@substack.com. Let us know what you liked and what you didn't, what you want more of and what you need less of, or whatever else comes to mind. Ideas for stories and guests are always welcome. That's Trey Graham, Trey with an E, and Graham, like the cracker, .substack.com. Thanks for listening.